All right, we are on cycle one. For cycle one, I need you to have a notebook ready and I need you to have your book open to page 127. Pause the video and find those two things. Now that you have your book open to page 127 and something to take notes with, as we read, I want you to look for examples of contrast, so those differences, and make notes of those. Following along, at the top of page 127, never trust a cripple. I'm waiting for something to happen. The whole world except me is asleep, and the only sound is him breathing heavy. I'm trying to see through the curtains, but out the old lady's window when it finally gets light. But the snow is stuck to the glass and everything is fuzzy, which is pretty much how I feel. Looking down at him on the floor, how he overflows on the rug, I think about that story where a giant falls asleep and is tied up by little people. Not that I do anything. I'm just a blob in the chair with numb hands and numb feet. So let's pause there. We already see contrast. I'm going to give you 20 seconds, and I want you to try to find where you see contrast in these first two paragraphs. All right, I'd like you to shout it out. Tell me or tell someone in your room with you, someone in your house, where do you see contrast? Go. Yes, I see contrast in the fact that the whole world is asleep except me. So he's awake, everybody else is asleep. We also see contrast with the size of people. So we see his dad is overflowing on the rug. His dad is huge, and it reminds him of the story about a giant getting tied up. But Max is just a blob, so he's not a giant. All right, there we see our contrast. Let's continue to look for contrast as we read. Follow along, we're starting with finally. Finally, what happens? There's a noise from the back, and these little skittery footsteps, and then my father comes awake so fast he almost yanks me from the chair. He's on his feet with this wild look in his eye, and Loretta Lee glides into the room. We're at the top of page 128. Merry Christmas, boys, she says. She's got this pizza box in her hands, holding it out like a present. Where's Iggy? My father asks. Waiting for Santa Claus, Loretta says. Ain't nothing open this morning, but we got this left over. You're welcome to it. Best put that down, he says, and he pulls on the rope and lifts me up. He gives her this cold look. You go on and get Iggy, he says. Loretta Lee is wearing this long winter coat. It looks clean and brand new, so she probably got it for Christmas. But her legs are skinny and bare where her feet go into these old rubber boots. She's smoking the cigarette and squinting through the smoke at my father, like she's trying to figure out what he's thinking. I want to point out a key word from this last little bit. It said but when it was describing her. So everything looked clean and brand new, but her legs are skinny and bare. So showing that difference in Loretta, we see a little bit of contrast there. Let's continue reading. Starting right here. Why can't you be nice, Kenny? She says. We had some good times in the old days, remember? The old days are over, he says. That the best you can do for us, leftover pizza? Hey, pizza's good for you, she says. It has vitamins and stuff. I still want to see Iggy. Loretta takes a drag on her cigarette, and she's got this crooked smile. Her eyes keep flicking at me and the way I'm roped up. But mostly she's looking at him. Iggy'll be up soon, she says. He had himself a tough night. I have business with him, Loretta, he says. Important business. I'm sure, she says, and she turns in her boots and leaves through the back. The pizza box is sitting there on the table, but my father says we can't eat anything touched by her dirty hands. So he walks me out into the dark kitchen, and he unties me and we go through the cupboards and find mostly boxes of prunes and old cereal. There's nothing in the refrigerator that hasn't already gone bad. So I eat a bowl of cornflakes with water, and I'm so hungry it almost tastes good. This is what they call a temporary situation, he says. I know a way we can live like kings if we play our cards right. He stops for a while and squints at me like he wants to see inside my head. We'll be heading for warmer weather. That agreeable with you, boy? Yes, sir, it is. He seems really thoughtful. I had a lot of time to plan this out. A lot of time to study people, figure out what makes them tick. First thing, we'll get a bus, one of those RV things, a real big one, because it's important to look impressive. Put a name on the side, the Reverend Kenneth David Kane. Or it might or it might be we'll go with another name, just to be on the safe side. Did you guess I was a man of God, boy? Could you tell that by looking at me? Yes, sir, I say. No, sir. What's that mean, boy? I don't know, sir. He reaches out and tussles my hair. You'll learn, he says. You'll be standing out in front of the bus in a real nice suit. What you do is collect money in a basket. You won't have to steal it because folks will give it to a man of God. And that they love to hear. And what they love to hear about is a bad man who has redeemed himself. There's our word, redeemed. So he's made up for what he's done. I learned how to preach the word to a lot of illiterate, meaning can't read, convicts. But they were no more ignorant than a lot of other folk. No, sir, we're going to do just fine. I'd like to pause there and look at our question. He says that he's going to be a man of God, so he wants to be a preacher. And in Christianity, redemption refers to being saved from sin, error, or evil. According to the New Testament, a person who is redeemed is free from sin through Jesus. We know that. Some Christian ministers preach the Christian redemption message through personal stories while traveling around to different groups of people, rather than serving one particular church or congregation. When people are inspired by their preaching, they might donate money to the church. So let's reread this excerpt from the page that we just read, page 130, and what contrast or differences do you see in the line? Do you think Kenny Kane is actually redeemed? Why or why not? You'll be standing out in front of the bus in a real nice suit. What you do is collect money in a basket. You won't have to steal it because the folks will give to a man of God. What they love to hear about is a bad man who has redeemed himself. Now, I'd like you to think real hard about this. And we can think about people that we learned about in Word of God, like Zacchaeus, who was the tax collector, who took more money than he should have and kept it for himself. Just kind of what Kenny Kane is doing here. He's taking money and keeping it for himself. It doesn't actually go to a church. Is that right in God's eyes? Is that something that is free of sin, or is stealing a sin? I want you to tell me what you think. When you're done, we're going to continue reading, so open up your book again, and we're going to continue to look at this contrast here, starting with after. After I finish the cornflakes, he ties me up again. This is just a precaution, he says. Can't take any chances until you see the light. You want to see the light? Yes, sir, I do. He's grinning at me and he taps himself on the chest and says, You're looking at it, boy. I am the light, and don't you ever forget it. That's a lot right there. If we think about our symbolism from a little bit ago, what was the light? The light was good stuff, the good things in his life. Can we believe uh, Kenny Kane here? Is he actually the good stuff? There's that tension, there's that uncertainty. We don't know yet. So I'd like you to move on to cycle 2 and we'll continue reading.